I'm Quinn Thomas, an associate professor at Virginia Tech, and my co-authors and I are excited to share results from our project focusing on developing near-term iterative forecasts of water quality in a managed drinking water reservoir. The project is an interdisciplinary team of biophysical scientists, social scientists, engineers, computer scientists, and water managers from 3 universities and a regional water authority. It is supported by the National Science Foundation. There's been a global increase in anoxia, or low oxygen events, and algal blooms that are degrading water quality in lakes and reservoirs. These are controlled, at least in part, by water temperature. Therefore, water temperature and oxygen forecasts have potential to help guide preemptive management, like adding oxygen to the water body or preparing for water treatment in a water treatment plant. Our core questions focus on the forecastability or predictability of water temperature and oxygen at the 16-day time horizon. We focus on the 16-day time horizon because numerical weather forecasts are provided at that horizon and is long enough to provide information for short-term management decisions. We also investigate how relative forecast skill differs between the physical variable, that is water temperature, and the chemical variable, oxygen, with our hypothesis that the physical variable has more skill than the chemical variable because it is more directly driven by weather than the chemical processes that are in part driven by biology. We address these questions at a shallow drinking water reservoir in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Central Virginia. It is a small reservoir with a history of algal blooms and is managed by the Western Virginia Water Authority. Importantly, it has a hypolimnetic oxygenation system for management. When activated, the hypolimnetic oxygenation system pulls water from the deepest part of the reservoir and adds oxygen before pumping the water back to the same depth. This increases the oxygen in the depths where low oxygen or anoxia is more likely to occur without altering the thermal structure of the reservoir. The figure also notes the key terms describing the depths of the reservoir during a stratified period. The surface depths are the epilimnion. The depths where there's rapid change in temperature with depth is the metalimnion, and the deepest part of the reservoir is the hyperlimnion. Our forecasting system, which we call FLARE, Forecasting Lake and Reservoir Ecosystems, each day pulls meteorology and inflow weir data from the reservoir and uses them to drive a model prediction from yesterday to today. It then pulls in situ observations of temperature and oxygen that are used to update the model predictions using data assimilation. The updated model predictions of the state of the reservoir today are used as initial conditions for a 16-day forecast that is driven by NOAA's global Ensemble forecasting system and a simple model of inflows. The results of the 16-day forecast are archived, and they're also summarized in an email that is sent to the Water Authority. FLARE is an open source approach that is available on GitHub with a paper describing it in review and on the bioarchive at the link shown at the bottom of the slide. Our in situ measurements at the reservoir that are used in data assimilation and forecast evaluation include temperature at 9 depths and dissolved oxygen at 3 depths. Our measurements of model drivers include on-site meteorology and a gauged inflow. This is complemented by other measurements that aren't directly used in this analysis. Importantly, observational uncertainty is quantified for temperature and oxygen by comparing multiple sensors measuring the same variables at the same depths. Our water temperature and oxygen forecasts use the general lake model with the Aquatic Ecosystem Dynamics module. It is a 1D mechanistic model that simulates hydrodynamics along with chemical and biological processes. The GLM AED is an open source model that is widely used by the community. For this application, we only use the oxygen model within the AED module. The uncertainty in model predictions are based on the RMSE from a multi-year calibration at the reservoir. We use the Ensemble common filter to update model predictions using observations, a process called data assimilation. In the data assimilation period that's to the left of the vertical gray line, you can see the model predictions as represented as an ensemble of GLM simulations, each with process noise added. track the data shown in red with their uncertainty shown as the error bars, before they then spread out in the forecast period to the right of the vertical gray line. The data shown in the forecasting period is for reference and was not used to constrain the model predictions. Overall, the data assimilation is a balance of the observational and model uncertainty. Our analysis is technically a hindcast because we're performing the forecasts after the data has become available, but we are using real weather forecasts from the corresponding time period. Data is only used in the data assimilation step. Overall, the study is designed to mimic an actual deployment of the forecasting system. We forecasted water temperature and oxygen weekly between October 2018 and April 2020. We evaluated the root mean squared error at 3 depths, the epilimnion, the metalimnion, and the hypolimnion, for each day in the 16-day forecast horizon. Importantly, we compare the forecasts from the GLM AED to forecasts from a simple model that assumes water temperatures and oxygen do not change over the 16-day forecast horizon. This is simulated as a random walk and uses data assimilation just like the GLM AED. We found that water temperature forecasts using the GLM AED, the red color, are better than the persistence null, the green color, at all depths, shown as the 3 panels, with the largest improvements over the null near the surface in the epilimnion. The y-axis shows the root mean squared error for the GLM AED and the null models average for each of the 16-day forecast horizon over the period of time that we produce forecasts. Higher values reflect worse performance. The key finding is that the largest gains over the null model are at the surface, the leftmost panel, where the temperatures are more dynamic and coupled to the atmosphere. At depth, the reduced coupling to the atmosphere favors more consistent temperatures over a 16-day time horizon, thus favors the persistence null model. In contrast, the oxygen forecasts at the surface are similar to the null, with some improvements over the null at depth. This is because the GLM AED can simulate the forcing from the oxygenation system at depth, and it can simulate the reduction in oxygen at depth in the early summer that the null model is not able to capture. However, it's hard to perform better than the null when close to 100% saturation and equilibrium with the atmosphere. We use the skill score to compare the relative forecastability between the physical and chemical variables. The skill score is 1 minus the ratio of the GLM AED RMSE to the null RMSE, with 1 being a perfect model and negative values signifying that the GLM AED performs worse than the null. Overall, the skill score shows that water temperature, the red color, is more forecastable as defined as improvement over the null than oxygen, the green color, with the largest gains over the null at the surface, the left panel. The improvements over the null and oxygen are at depth and at the end of the 16-day time horizon. Based on the encouraging results for forecasts of oxygen at depth, we can envision a scenario-based forecast where forecasts are produced with the oxygenation system turned on and off. This would allow water managers to evaluate whether money can be saved by turning off the oxygenation system. The first figure is an example where the oxygenation system is already off, and the forecasts show that turning on the oxygenation system will alleviate anoxia, the blue lines, compared to a simulation with the oxygenation system off, the red lines. Ultimately, the oxygenation system was turned on, which is reflected in the data. The middle panel shows an example where the oxygenation system is on, and forecasts show that keeping oxygen system on, the blue lines, is necessary to maintain high oxygen levels. The system was actually turned off, and you can see that the oxygenation levels declined, as in the forecast with the oxygenation system turned off, the red lines. Finally, the last example is where the oxygenation system is on, and the forecasts show that turning off will not lead to declines in oxygen, so it would save money to turn off the oxygenation system. Overall, our study highlights the importance of using a null model as a comparison when evaluating forecasts. and our application, the RMSE of the GLMAD forecasts were reasonable compared to other non-forecasting studies using the same model. But the learning occurred when comparing to the simple persistence null model. We learned that the physical processes have much higher forecast skill than the chemical at the surface and are better, but not as much so at depth. The forecast skill of the chemical states, that is oxygen, did improve at deeper depths and longer time horizons. Finally, we're in the process of including biological variables like dissolved organic matter and chlorophyll A, and we're also working on applying the forecasting approach to other water bodies. We're especially excited about using our approach in the upcoming NEON Ecological Forecasting Challenge that is organized by the NSF-sponsored Ecological Forecasting Initiative Research Coordination Network. The challenge, similar to a data science competition, will set rules for teams to submit forecasts of water temperature and oxygen in NEON water bodies. We'll then compare results to learn about what methods are best for forecasting and what variables are most forecastable. We hope that you consider submitting forecasts to the challenge, and we'll be announcing the forecasting challenge rules later this fall on the Ecological Forecasting Initiative website, ecoforecast.org, shown here. Thank you for viewing our talk, and my contact information is below if you have questions.